Alpha and Omega, beginning and end. There was morning and there was evening, male and female, darkness and light, flesh and spirit, heaven and earth, unbelief and faith, hands and feet. One of my favorite poets, Jericho Brown, wrote of another favorite poet of mine, A.E. Housman, that one of the secrets to Housman's saturated poetry is the way he employs something called polysyndeton. Now, this is a literary stylistic scheme that reflects the deliberate insertion of conjunctions, like the word and, for the purpose of slowing up the rhythm of prose in order to produce an impressively solemn note. The word polysyndeton is Greek, like most of my favorite words, and the poly means many, while syndeton means bound together. The stylistic device uses the conjunction to add rhythm and to also create a merism, which is a rhetorical device that combines two contrasting parts of a whole. Nope. Okay, that's not good. All right, let's go back up to the top. Let's do this again. Let's make the text size just a wee bit bigger, maybe. Maybe that will help. All right, let's try it again. Alpha and Omega, beginning and end. There was morning and there was evening, male and female, darkness and light, flesh and spirit, heaven and earth, unbelief and faith, hands and feet. One of my favorite poets, Jericho Brown, wrote of another favorite poet of mine, A.E. Housman, that one of the secrets to Housman's saturated poetry is the way he employs something called polysyndeton. Now, this is a literary stylistic scheme that reflects the deliberate insertion of conjunctions, like the word and, for the purpose of slowing up the rhythm of prose in order to produce an impressively solemn note. The word polysyndeton is Greek, like most of my favorite words, and the poly means many, while syndeton means bound together. This stylistic device uses the conjunction to add rhythm and to create a merism, which is a rhetorical device that combines two contrasting parts of a whole to refer to that whole. Now, Wikipedia tells me that a great example of this is if I wanted to say, for instance, that I searched everywhere, I might say that I searched high and low. I think that both of these devices make for better writing and for better speech making, and I must be right? Because the Bible is just chock full of them. Paul was especially fond of the merism, and that means for me, right, I must be on the right track. But here's the thing. We get into habits where we don't read or hear the polysyndeton and the merism, and instead we hear two contrasting things, and we think, well, we're only talking about two contrasting things. We hear hands and feet and think we are only meant to be the hands and feet of Jesus. We hear heaven and earth, and we come to think that these are very different, separate places. We hear flesh and spirit, and we think that these things are separate from each other. We hear morning and we hear evening, and we forget there's a whole lot of day to our days. And we hear, like in today's scripture, beginning and end, and we forget that there's a whole lot of life to our lives. And I wonder if some of our modern struggles don't stem from having lost sight of the polysyndeton, of the merisms of God. Remember, the polysyndeton invites us to pause in the conjunction, And yet in our lives, the conjunction becomes the indication of continuity. It becomes the thing that keeps us going on and on and on, like the Energizer bunny without a period in sight. A few days ago, Facebook reminded me that I have 6 events happening this weekend. 6 events over 2 days. And Facebook wasn't even tracking the 2 papers that I need to write for my next sermon next week, this particular reflection, a funeral, or really any of the activities that are related to being a mom of 2 kiddos or the wife of an active duty soldier. Can you relate? I mean, maybe instead of papers for you, it's appointments or maybe volunteer hours, or maybe it's even your day-to-day job. I see a meme on Facebook that pops up for me quite a bit that says something like, in 1960, a person could purchase a home on a full-time job that paid minimum wage. Today, especially here in Northern Virginia, it requires 2 full-time incomes. In 1960, you could leave your place of work and go home on a Friday and for most jobs be pretty confident that work wasn't going to contact you again until you walked in the doors on Monday morning. But with the advent of email and mobile phones, with more computing power in one app than anyone ever dreamed when the first computer was leased to businesses in 1956, there's an expectation that when you leave work on a Friday afternoon, you might see the email your boss sends you at 2 p.m. on a Saturday. It's not a stretch to say that we're caught up in a way of being that has made Ferris Bueller's famous line a given truth. Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. And we're afraid of missing it. FOMO, fear of missing out, is not just a great marketing ploy from Verizon in commercials featuring JJ Watt. It's a real thing. And we live in a world where people selling cars, selling TVs, selling phones, selling computers, literally selling anything, hyper focus on this fear in order to sell us more stuff. But it's also the driving force that leads us to put incredible emphasis on the high points of life, on the births, the baptisms, the weddings, and the funerals, and forget that a life of faith incorporates all of these things, but is also about so much more than just these moments. At my wedding, I hung this really lovely sign that said, "Life isn't about the number of breaths we take, but the number of moments that take our breath away." And it's a lovely sentiment, and it truly made for the best backdrop for photos. But to be honest, life really isn't about the moments that take our breath away. It's about the way we live our normal, everyday, humdrum lives. But when we rush from high moment to high moment to high moment, we get caught up in seeking more high moments. We can get kind of laser tunnel focused on that search and we forget to breathe. I mean, is it any wonder, I wonder, that the self-care industry is a $450 billion market? As a people always on the go, we're a people desperate for the space to take a breath. And so a whole industry has blossomed almost overnight to offer us plenty of highly scheduled ways for us to do that. We can sign up for yoga classes and meditation workshops. We can schedule our manicures and tea times, or our golf lessons and tea times. People are always asking me, are you making enough time for self-care? One evaluation from a professor last year told me that I needed to take more time for self-care. As if by paying for a babysitter and going to the nail salon or the masseuse is going to fix a world that moves so fast that we can't breathe. Because if we're really honest, it won't. Instead of fixing it, the self-care industry just slaps some pretty nail polish on the brokenness of the world and tries to call it done. But God, though, God calls us out of the world so that we might do something more than just offer ourselves a gift card to the massage parlor or the putting green. God calls us out of this world so that we might live with the intention of making the world different from what it is now. Alpha and Omega, beginning and end. God's polysyndeton is designed to slow us down, to help us pause, to give us space to breathe. God is not only the beginning and the ending of all things. God is, in fact, all things. God is before our beginning and after our ending. And God is between our beginning and our ending. And in the story arc of our lives, God is literally the arc. Instead of rushing from the beginning past the conjunction so that we can get to the end, God invites us into a space of pause so that we can wonder at all of the ways in which God is working in us and around us and between us and through us. God is inviting us into the moment of and. The conjunction may not take our breath away, but that's because God's created this space so that we can feel our breath fully. That's the purpose of Advent. In the rush, we are invited to pause, to light a candle, to hold this piece of bread and this cup of juice for just a moment longer, to savor their tastes in our mouths, to connect with our breath as we wait in prayer, to pray together as a community after we have communed at the communion table. We are a people desperate for peace, and we've forgotten that God has already created a space for us to come and find the quiet center. And so hear the words of this beautiful song. Come and find the quiet center in the crowded life we lead. Find the room for hope to enter. Find the frame where we are freed. Clear the chaos and the clutter. Clear our eyes that we can see all the things that really matter. Be at peace and simply be. Silence is a friend who claims us, cools the heat and slows the pace. God it is who speaks and names us, knows our being, touches base, making space within our thinking, lifting shadows to show the sun, raising courage when we're shrinking, finding scope for faith begun. In the Spirit, let us travel open to each other's pain. Let our lives and fears unravel and celebrate the space we gain. There's a place for deepest dreaming. There's a time for heart to care. In the Spirit's lively scheming, there is always room to spare. There is always room to spare in God's polysyndeton. Don't rush God's conjunctions hurrying from one pole to the other, but in the space that God offers you this Advent, let us travel in the Spirit and celebrate the space we've gained by worshiping more fully, spending less, giving more, and truly, truly loving all.